Hello and welcome back to the Handstandcast with me, Emmett Lewis, and my co-host Mikael Christiansen. How are things going, Mikael?
I am currently caffeinating for the first time of the day, so I guess the general mood is improving from not great to acceptable, I assume.
Yeah,
Mm,
I think I'm
I've had
already on
about
to my third coffee
one
today.
cup. Hmm?
Have you spilled the coffee today, or is it
No,
unspilt?
I spilled some. What was it? You know what? Like one of those. Like I didn't have any butter when I was gonna what's it called? Fry my eggs. So I just took that like my housemate has this like it's kind of a mix of oil and garbage. It's terrible. I usually don't use it. It's basically like fluid butter kind of thing. So I took
Yeah.
it out of the fridge and just dropped it on the floor and splat everywhere. So that was kind of miserable. But like the spillage itself was, I mean, it was reasonably contained. There was no Chernobyl effect in it, so I was able to get it up with one smooth what's it called, napkin, and it was all good. So
Uh,
yeah,
One
surviving.
spill a day keeps the, I don't know, the handstand fairy away, or
Now I spilled coffee. Take it out. Helvetes
he
drit.
just spilled coffee
I mean, this is a
on his
bike. I
own
don't spill
arm
it
that
out.
was holding the coffee cup.
Yeah, but like it was like to quote Tyrone from Snatch, it was a funny angle.
Ah, yeah.
So yeah, things.
So Infinite Wednesday continues. The world is
Mhm.
safe because Mikael is spilling, and everything is good. So anyway, suppose we just get on with the podcast, so we can talk about how we're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
I can't wait till we actually can tell people like Infinite Wednesday has ended, and we've actually done something different. I went to a bar and drank 15
2077.
Guinness in one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a record, by the way. Said it myself. Anyway, so the topic of our podcast today is something we get questions about a lot, actually. We are going to talk about the two-footed footstand. So it's probably one of these things that's quite common for a lot of you out there, the footstanding. But we feel like a lot of people haven't got any sort of formal teaching on this. I feel people kind of, I don't know about you, but I kind of taught myself how to footstand many years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I guess like I learned it too myself. So I mean, a lot of people are self-taught on it. I guess most people are self-taught, but then again, it's the question of how well do you want to footstand. And I
Yeah,
think that like if you really want like proper form, and if you want to be like super good at it, and like want to do the like on one, and like being able to jump and all of those kind of things, I think that like the better kind of formality and the better technique in
yeah.
principle you have on it, of course it's going to carry over the years.
Yeah, I remember when I first learned to footstand, like I started out just holding on to something. This was kind of what I've done. I transitioned from the quadruped footstand, so just our kind of plank movements. And then, like you do in handstands, I kind of, if you're teaching yourself the common, I tried to stand and fell over, tried to stand and fell over, stood a bit longer, then fell over. And as that repeated process of like success and failure, I suppose, kind of slowly educated the good form in there, more so than having a
Yeah,
set kind of teaching.
I mean, it's almost as if the brain and kind of the body structure has an inherent property when it comes to learning this kind of balance, and that it's an intuitive process that the body goes through. And uh, I think also what is very important, most people learn the footstand when they're very young, so they have no kind of intellectualization of the process. It's basically a trying and failing kind of thing that on like
Yeah,
goes on basically all day every day for a certain period of one's life until kind of the stability is built. And I do think it's a very interesting or a very important takeaway from that in terms of all learning, that uh, it is the kind of continuous relentless practice of it that eventually leads to the results. But
yeah,
particularly in this case, since it's so early, and there's been a lot of brain research and kind of body research, of course, on the youths that are learning it, and since it's particularly since it's such a universal thing, like like practically everyone who doesn't have any like significant body or brain conditions that would stop the learning or hinder the learning of the footstand will eventually, like almost automatically, start to do it as children.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like, I suppose when you were learning as children, and even now, there's this concept, I suppose, and it's almost like the federation and the straight stand versus just normal standing. And it's kind of interesting when we start going back to, say, the roots of physical culture and training and stuff. Like, a lot of it came from army discipline, a lot of it had marching, and it's very straight, alert posture. And a lot of people think this, like, standing up straight is now the default posture you have to do your footstand in. Whereas if we kind of look around the world, you know, there is variety there. There's not actually one true way of foot standing, but a lot of it comes down to this, like, you must stand up straight and you must, like, not drop your head. Whereas we kind of, like, there's different ways. It's this kind of thing, like the Federation has imposed this idea that you must stand up completely straight, whereas we are kind of saying, well, maybe you might want to slouch. Maybe the footstand could be a relaxing posture. You don't always have to be tense. Mm-hmm. You can be selective in your tension in the footstand.
Yeah, like it's hilarious. I mean, the amount of postural kind of hysteria that is out there in terms of like you have to be able to stand like this or else you will basically break your body. Seen loads of this. Like I often get them up on kind of my Instagram. Like you have someone just standing and like in a kind of normal posture, and then you have them like the same person. Then like there's one with kind of a green tick mark, and then there's one picture with like the red cross, and in the red cross they're standing like excessively slouched with the upper back or kind of excessively arching the back or stuff, like in a position that most people don't do. And even if you do it, it's like it's unlikely that the like normal degrees of it is more about anatomical variation rather than it being like something that will by default ruin your entire existence. But then again, it's a good sales pitch to tell you that you need to do these things exactly this way. And hey, guess what? I know how to teach you that.
Yes.
So,
you must stand completely straight with your knees locked, stomach sucked in. That's always seems to be one of these ones. It's not cool to have like your organs in their correct position. You must pull them up into your rib cage at all times. This kind of forward superhero posturing, I suppose, is one of these things. I think it's kind of interesting, that one, the posture as a communication tool, where this hero standing got popular with that TED Talk a few years ago, where if you kind of stand in your alpha dominant superhero posture, you become more alpha dominant and better hormones and all this. But then they repeated all the studies.
Posing. Yeah. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of, I think.
Yeah. And then they repeated all the things, and like in much these kind of psychological literature stuff, it just it doesn't work the second time around. But it kind of became a method. And I remember there was people teaching power posing method and the power posing stand and the hero posing and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it kind of goes to show, like, posture as a communication tool, what manifests the posture and the straight stand and stuff is the internal, what's going on inside. That's the kind of manifestation of it. And if you do the outward form of it, it doesn't actually give you the internal thing. So it kind of, you know, this kind of thing, can I mimic being happy? I suppose it's almost like if we extrapolate the footstand to its more advanced kind of variants of like acting and stuff like this, like a lot of what acting and dancing is looking for is trying to make an internal process visible and not an external process infect the inside, because that's just kind of a form of body wanking.
I can imagine that when they were doing this kind of stuff, I mean, like let's say you go into a class when someone's going to teach you power posing, and they say that they
don't teach you advanced foot standing.
Yeah, like they explicitly tell you that now we're going to stand confidently, and that is going to make you feel like this and like this, and so on and so on, and asking leading questions and that kind of stuff. Of course, you're going to have some sort of limited effect on it, but just like I think it's part of that sort of almost like toxic positivity thing, just like just stand like this and it's going to help you. And then like you try standing like that, and well, guess what, it didn't actually help, because your emotional state might actually be bound up to more fundamental human needs than how you're actually standing, and then it doesn't work, and then you feel even more shit, because oh shit, maybe I'm a bad person because I didn't like the great trick that I learned didn't automatically activate my happy hormones.
What was that one? There's a great meme going around at the moment. Or, you know, I don't even know his name. It's not Wojak, but the guy with the beard. The guy with the epic chin and the beard. And I was like, nobody. And she goes, I don't feel confident. I should go to the gym. And then the next screen is him with loads of jacked muscles. I was like, that wasn't it. I still feel like shit.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Yeah, I've seen that one.
I think that's one of my favorite ones. So it kind of leads up to the next question, I suppose, is like, how much core strength do you need to have to do the straight stand? And this, I suppose, where it comes down to like slouching. People would say, oh, if you're slouching or relaxing in the posture, you don't have enough core strength to do the straight standing. But maybe, I don't know. It's like, it's kind of one of those things. I feel like you need to work up to probably about a 15-minute plank before you should really be attempting the straight stand.
Yeah, it can be a good indicative. At least then you have the ability to resist gravity kind of when you're in a horizontal plane, and the degree that will carry over to when all the bones are stacked on top of each other is very obvious. So I do think that it's like it's
a good baseline,
it's a good benchmark, if anything. So that kind of stuff. I mean, crunches.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of crunches.
And I think being hyper aware at all times about exactly how you stand and trying to manipulate that when you sit, so that you never sit slouched or never sit in any kind of posture that doesn't look like you are an architectural contraption.
It's definitely one of these things I found like what was quite useful for my straight standing was to cut all the backs off all the chairs in my house.
That's me. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works.
Yeah, it's very.
That's how it was in ancient times too. I mean, no one would sit down like next to a tree and lean their back or like sit on a soft surface. They'd all look for like the exact straight rocks, so they could basically explicitly state the straightness of their spine.
Yeah, I really feel like this idea of like imposing straightness on nature is just like, if we look at curves and spirals, we counter nature, but it doesn't really bode well with me. And I prefer this kind of Victorian imperialism of imposing straight lines onto everything. So for me, like if I think back to the greatest invention of mankind was when we figured out with rocks, we could chisel them into straight lines, and then we could copy them with our own standing posture. It really gives a good contrast to it. And that's why in my house I only have straight walls. If anyone like knows about Irish building, like it's very, they're very negligent with right angles. But for me and my straight stand, I need that right angle to align myself with it perfectly.
Yeah, there's this other thing that like I've seen like again on Instagram, one of these pictures with a check mark and a red cross is like you've seen them loads in the commercials for beds, where it's like you lie in the bed and your spine is curved. You are officially ruined forever. And then you have the one that puts a little pillow underneath your back, or like an expensive like 10,000 euros bed that keeps your spine magically straight and is going to fix all of your issues.
Yeah. The problem with these sort of orthotic things and kind of body straighterizers, we have that inverted one as well you use for handstand training that puts you in the perfect inversion, is it doesn't really train a lot of the muscular control and subtle skills and body control we need for the straight stand, because we are trying to stand with our correct stomach sucked in, head tall, all this kind of stuff, whereas if you're relying on the machine to put you in that thing, you'll always just have to wear the machine. So I find it's even on the
maybe that's also like an argument for like all those kind of like parents when like in terms of spotting and stuff when kids are learning, like as parents often like you kind of hold them up a bit so they get some more time on like holding their weight when the legs aren't strong and smart enough yet to hold the balance. I mean, maybe there should be more research done in terms of the efficacy of spotting of a baby learning to stand on their feet in relation to like just letting them try. And I mean, like maybe also for maybe that should also be applied for kids, that like they should do a lot more plank before they stand up, and like that they should have like a conditioning regime of sets and reps,
Yeah.
rather than just randomly trying to stand, because then you could just like maybe you could create like a specific protocol then that like you just have the baby do like, okay, yeah, no, don't, no standing up
Yeah.
by the table, go do your conditioning in the corner.
Yeah. It's a pretty good idea. I think a lot of what's probably lacking when you're learning the foot stand is your parents don't really have like a formal education. They don't understand you have to engage in about 15 minutes of foot prep before you do it. You know, you have to do your toe raises, your calf raises, inversions, eversions, you know, all these kind of things before you can do it. And obviously, like, you have to be able to scale these back to your level. So you're kind of stuck at this thing. It kind of leads nicely into one of our questions. We have a question, actually, that we'll do a few more questions towards the end as well, but this kind of fits in nicely. It is from Little Timmy, and Little Timmy is 11 months old. He says, my parents want me to work up to 10 minutes standing using the wall before learning to walk. Do you think this is excessive?
For 10 months old?
Yeah, 11 months old, you know. I feel you should, like, be doing probably about 45 minutes standing using the wall. Like, you are only small at this age, so it should be fine.
Yeah.
Before trying the freestanding, free balancing foot stand, you know.
Yeah, it's probably less risk of getting injured and falling too. But I mean, then again, getting injured and like, or falling over, like then at least you learn your falling technique, since babies are really good at kind of just like bracing by like putting their ass on the ground since they're so small.
I think it's one of those things, I suppose, if you wanted, like, once you were able to do the 10, 15 minutes, you could probably try free balancing. You know, if you wanted to, you could probably wear 2 or 3 nappies to pad it up a little and just make it extra safe.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's definitely one of these things. And, you know, I suppose, it's always one of these things. It's always a different thing. But, you know, 45 minutes minimum standing using the wall is pretty good for anyone, I think, at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, like, because at one point, I mean, if you get a job that requires a lot of standing as well, it's very important that your posture is spot on. And then you might also, I mean, it's also the thing of walking, which is like in the regards of the standing versus walking, you kind of need to stand to be able to walk on your feet.
Yeah.
Which, like, isn't really the case on the hands to the same degree, but on the feet, it's very mandatory to be able to stand. So having some standards in principle just for that, so that you can start having the ability to walk, because you might need to do stuff such as go to the shop, or like even just move yourself from point A to point B. It's relevant, and when you get to point B, you might need to do stuff while you stand up as well. So
you know, how are you going to get it on the swing set at the park if you can't stand up at it? Like, you have to think about this as well, like crawl over to it, you know. So I think it's good here to set some hard prerequisite standards before doing anything. 45 minutes minimum. Kind of leads into the next kind of thing, or I suppose we're getting into our questions now. One of, you know, I'm not going to say who said this because it's a bit embarrassing, but how should I breathe when standing? You know, it's kind of this classic one of like,
there's many thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could choose to breathe normally, and just like let the air flow in and out as your nervous system does by itself. Or you could also choose to excessively and obsessively focus on how you're breathing, because that is likely going to help you significantly to manage your life by overcomplicating your breathing pattern all the time, and not just while meditating, but like by kind of imagining that or basically attributing your emotional and mental state only to your breathing, and then like consistently over focus on it. And then like there's a likelihood that you will feel as if it doesn't help, and that you will just like get frustrated and start searching out for a new type of breathing pattern, or jump into cold water and breathing pattern or whatnot.
Jump into hot fire with breathing patterns, very popular as well, I hear.
Yeah. That can also work. I mean, but I think the most important thing is that like make sure that air comes in and that air also leaves.
Yeah.
And that you keep this to be like a continuous process where it doesn't stop, because that can be a sort of a problem, and particularly if it stops for like a long period of time, like it's going to be really hard to start again.
Yeah.
So like even impossible to start again at a certain point. So just make sure above everything else that air comes in and then it exits again, and after it exits, it comes in again, and then you repeat the pattern.
I definitely think like with the straight stand, the full straight military spec stand, you have to be careful of not breathing too deep into your abdomen. You don't want the breath to go in deep. You need to keep it nice and shallow in the rib cage. Otherwise, let's face it, your stomach's going to push out, and that's just going to be unattractive in your Instagram photos. So, you know, keep the air in the rib cage, you know, that kind of thing as well.
Like it's particularly if you're going to take photos, like you need to make sure that like you don't do that and the lighting is good and like all those things, so that you make sure that like the likelihood of like being picked up by a Gymshark is high.
Yeah, it's very important. That actually leads perfectly into our next one, kind of on aesthetics, and this kind of one of these debates. Like, is it okay to stand with closed hips, aka anterior pelvic tilt? Now, I suppose we could equate this to our normal handstand standing, and you know, some people, they will stand in the arched handstand, and we know that the arched handstand was an aesthetic choice back in the day. And it appears like the anterior pelvic tilt has become a bit more of an aesthetic choice. You see this very on a lot of these sports models on Instagram, where they choose to stand with this anterior pelvic tilt because they've decided they prefer the aesthetic, whereas a lot of them are capable of standing straight. So there is a bit of a choice there, but then it also does come down to like, you know, just like our pecs and lats can inhibit our shoulder flexion and we can't get into straight line because of this, maybe you need to stretch your glutes and your hip flexors and stuff like this to get into it. But you know, a lot of the time what we're looking for is to be able to choose between like, am I standing with my butt pushed out, my butt pushed out, or am I choosing to stand straight? You know, what's the benefits in these photos? You know, which angle am I being shot from is very important when you choose this, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly like relevant questions to ask yourself. Like I mean, and when you start putting this together, like in terms of the aesthetics you want, like how you breathe, like who you want to observe, all of this, and that like all of these parts will be relevant in terms of like also like, I mean, choice of clothing and like what like basically what you want to do with it, and that is of course entirely up to you. But in terms of the efficiency of what you're doing, which I mean may or may not be the most important, you should always just like make sure to consciously obsess about every little detail, so that it's so you make sure that you're hyper aware, and since in case you make mistakes, everyone is going to notice, and
people will always notice how you're standing.
You're going to feel shame, and like it's going to be terrible, and you're probably going to deserve all the shame and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely one of these things like you always have to be aware. I remember I worked on a show a while ago. What the fuck was it? It was like a pantomime or kind of, I assume, background juggling as part of the car. And the director was obsessed. TNT, show me your TNT. And what he meant by that, tits and teeth. When you're on stage?
Serious?
Yeah. I think it's a thing in pantomime. I think it's just like pantos, I don't know, does Americans have them? Pantomimes are kind of a Christmas play with kind of generally fairy tales and stuff like this. And they're all singing, all dancing kind of casts, like that kind of thing. But yeah. If you weren't smiling and sticking your chest out on his stage, he would stop what was ever going on in that scene, even if you're in the background, and fucking shout at you, TNT. So tits and teeth, guys, remember this. Tits and teeth is very important. That will give you a nice like upward posture, and always look forwards. Never look down. So it's kind of one of those things. The next question we have actually is, I have trouble straight standing a lot of the time, and I find myself like drifting into a bit of lordosis or kyphosis. These are postural curves of the spine, and I find my spine is not straight enough. Do you think a corset would help me straighten my spine out?
Corset.
Corset.
I mean,
it depends on.
I think that it will likely. I mean, because you need to teach your body to do these things. So you might be better off like learning Nauli, for example, or similar things like that, since like it'll develop also belly button magic. which can be useful in a lot of other contexts. So I think that will, on average, be a better solution. What do you think, Emmett?
Yeah, I think with the corset, it's one of these things that like they can be incredibly useful. One for maintaining the stomach withdrawn posture we're looking for, and also trying to squish the organs up into the chest, so you get that big chest forward posture and kind of helps your head inflate a bit by the pressure. The problem with the corset, though, is there's two things going on here. One, you need to do more core work. You need to maybe do like 20, 30 minutes plank to balance out the corset, because you won't be doing as much control yourself. So there is this, but then there's a tendency for a lot of people with corsets to do them a bit too tight, and that can give a overemphasized look to the waist, which could be desirable. This is the thing. If it's in your context of where you do your straight standing, it could be fine. Like, if you're burlesque or, model, or maybe you just want to look better in like your work clothes, you could have a corset on, there. And there is kind of difference. Like, this is the kind of thing, to get a properly fitted one is probably pretty good. But at the same time, wearing a cheap one or one that's not fitted for you is probably not the best in this situation. Kind of a funny story about it. Like, I know this is quite a serious podcast at the moment, so I won't tell it, but remind me to tell the tango class story at some point.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, it's a bit too serious right now.
It reminded me of a thing. Those posture training things that they're selling, these kind of straps you put over your shoulders that like supposed to pull back your shoulders and kind of keep your shoulder blades in good posture and kind of retracted, sort of. Where like they probably cost like several €100 and like highly marketed, and kind of basically sells it to you by telling you that you're already broken and that you need fixing, which is very likely true, and that you need to use this since like your biology and your like the millions of years of evolution has led to a body structure that it has like basically evolution says it has led us to a point where we discovered and created this because the body just wasn't capable enough. And I guess like it also kind of peaks evolution at that point when it becomes self-aware enough to create a tool to sort out its upper body posture by a couple of fucking straps for €200.
I think that bow tie is definitely like reached peak evolution. I can even remember an ad like where it's there's the girl with the tick and she's got the red X because she's not standing straight, and then someone puts the bow tie on and cranks it up, and then the tick turns green. That was very inspirational for me, actually, to see just how confident this person became when they cranked the strap up really hard. And it just made me think of, like, what other areas of my life could I use a strap in? Anyway, so, with the bow tie thing, like, I just think, like, people haven't pushed it hard enough. Like, if we see the benefits this girl got on this Instagram ad that spammed me for quite a long time, but, I feel it's not corrective enough. I feel like it's just it's a passive control thing, whereas what we need is to mix in an active reminder. So possibly like a loud alarm that goes off whenever you slouch as well, and possibly a cattle prod, or like, some people would say a mild electric shock. I'm thinking we crank the voltage a little because, like, let's face it, you don't want to be caught in the background of someone snapping bad posture. So we get the bow tie, and like the second you slouch, it lets off a really loud flashing alarm. So then everyone will look at you, and not only will you have the control of the device, but you'll also have like societal shame because your alarm went off. And at the same time, once everyone's looking at you, you're getting electrocuted to reinforce the shame of people's eyes upon you.
Yeah.
So that's gonna...
there's also one thing I was thinking about in terms of like, like circling back to social media and like posting, like if you're thinking kind of like footstand posting and all of those kind of gym bro dudes on steroids that are like basically like
they're pretty good at footstanding, I have to say. Some of the best footstanders out there.
But they also have kind of they have very good control over that kind of like lat spread and that like, that kind of look into the distance with the sharp eyes that make him look very focused and kind of goal oriented. That is certainly one to master if you want to sort of make sure that other people think that you're like highly successful and smart. You might also want to, or like there's also this other one which is like the posture of the executive, the one that like rather wears kind of like an expensive looking suit, and also like the looking into the distance thing is very common though, like sort of like they have their eyes on the horizon and like they are going up and beyond and above what others would do. They have that kind of chin up sort of posture, like that again, like you talked about a little bit, like the chest forwards, but like the focus is not on the muscle this time. It's on sort of the sharpness of the look and the decisive attitude, which is on display by the posturing and the very precise engineering of the entire photograph. So
that's kind of a good example of what I was saying earlier, when it's like posture is dictated by almost as an internal communication tool. So these people, like, they're obviously very focused and dedicated, and that's what makes their posture so expansive and straight, because they're straight focused on their goal. Now, it's kind of like if we were to take another celebrity, I feel, who's a bit shit at this, is like, say, Bill Gates or even Steve Jobs as well. Like, they're just not as focused on their goal. Their companies are a bit too big and it's a bit too, mismanaged. So you never really see them in this kind of posture. I don't know, they're kind of mediocre minor celebrities, but there's a good contrast between like these, the entrepreneurs who are really hustling hard and really like chief executive CEOs. The guys, they got some courses out there, I think.
Yeah, exactly. There's almost like a very inverse, or like it's proportional. It's not inversely proportional. It's proportional, like how much you or how good you are at disposing, and your direct success. And like you said, like, you have people like Steve Jobs, who just like walks around being doofus, and
it looks like a bit hippie, really.
He made a fucking company, who cares? And then you have like these real deal people who consequently show how good their companies are, like
through their posture.
They don't worry about kind of like being on, like, what's it called, like having your company being one of the largest in the stock market or anything like that.
But that's only one company. A lot of these people have like 8 or 9 or 10 companies, which is much more successful than one.
They own like several websites. They rarely talk about even what company they own or what they sell.
Well, that's because
like
you know it through their posture. It's like, I don't even, I'm walking brand.
They have mastered the power pulsing and sort of the way of standing up for yourself and be glorious no matter what all of the others say. And also like they're really good at employing the concept of like other people being jealous and being haters when they call them out for shit. And that's something you can really easily do, again, if you use the correct kind of posturing. You look into the horizon with a sharp look, and you add something in the caption about other people, like they just wanna pull you down to their level or something.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the difference between like the wolf posture, I suppose this could be termed, instead of a hero pose, is the wolf. The lone wolf as well, not like a pack wolf. A lone wolf is very important. And
this is super true. And the fact is like they very often use the Wolf of Wall Street. They use loads of footage and pictures from Wolf of Wall Street, like a guy that of course got thrown in jail for being a total cunt, but that doesn't matter because like
that's just because he got caught.
Yeah, it's just because it got caught. And also like there's loads of images from the movie where Leonardo DiCaprio is looking cool and having the big parties and all of that, and we just take that out of context because all of that like being thrown in jail and fraud and all that stuff is irrelevant. All you need to know is that, like, check me out. I'm sharp as fuck and I know how to post it. So it's, and all of it starts with the footstand. This is so like kind of circling all the way back. This is what you need to master. You need to know the basics, and then slowly but surely you can start nuance it towards what you want to do with the footstand. I mean, if you want to be an elite runner, or if you want to just stand there holding your ground and showing the world how much you're worth. Yeah.
So actually leads to the next question nicely. Is our next question comes in from one of our listeners. I'm a long-time listener to podcasts, doing great work, guys. Keep it up. I was wondering, I haven't got a lot of time. I'm a very busy person. I sit down all day at the desk, but can I learn to footstand by practicing twice a week?
Twice a week?
Twice a week.
Little.
I think, I don't know, I suppose if you really max out the plank and, possibly, some other crunches as well. You can get a lot of work done twice a week. Then you have to do your foot conditioning as well. There is a lot that goes into this, but you could probably get some practice done. But like normally you want to segue back and probably, it's that goal of like you want to train as much as possible. And if you can only do twice a week, that's all you can do. You got to make it worthwhile. And, you could possibly start working while holding a plank. That's what I do. I normally am just typing at my desk in a plank most of the day. But I wouldn't suggest that to anyone listening when you're starting out. You have to be a monster like myself. And, but...
Good point. But don't you have like a friend who is like a posture expert?
Yeah, we asked Dr. Beck, he probably doesn't want us mentioning, about the questions. So Dr. Beck is a friend of mine who's a posture expert. You know this because he's a self-proclaimed doctor. Well, actually, he's not that's very terrible. He's actually a real doctor. And he's actually a posture expert. And he had a few things. He had a question actually first, or one thing we'd like us to talk about. Do I need orthotics to have a good footstand? So for those of you who don't know, orthotics are what encase your foot in they basically like force your foot into an arch to kind of make it arch and kind of, I think there's a genuine need for these. Like if, you always have to speak to your chiropodist and your foot doctor and basically go like, do I need one? But I think a lot of people could benefit from this kind of thing of like, we want, we're thinking like everyone needs their toes to point forward when standing at all times. Even when turning a corner, your feet need to point forward. I'm not certain how you turn a corner. Maybe a little jump would help. Just like jump 90 degrees, turn a corner. So your feet always go the same way.
That's actually a good idea. Then you don't need to twist the knees and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Like twisting, I find is very unattractive in a straight foot stand.
Yeah, it reminds me also like of one thing that's like, to go into like advanced foot standing, like I'm really not good at this, but I have a little bit of experience, and that's with high heels. So shout out to anyone, like any people that are really good at in high heels. But I was, when I was performing with Seven Fingers many years ago, there was a scene where I was playing the prostitute. Like that was literally the name of my character. And
playing
like,
the prostitute.
I was rigging a Chinese pole on stage. Like I was basically pulling a Chinese pole out, like from kind of the backstage from this huge house structure, and I was wearing a little night dress and fucking enormous high heels. Like I think the heel must have been 15 centimeters, and there was a plateau on the front of the shoe. The
That's
heel
some pretty
itself
advanced foot standing.
Yeah, the heel was quite kind of thick though. I mean, they were specifically constructed.
They weren't like the really skinny heel stiletto ones.
I mean, I would have died if it wasn't those. Like I don't have the skills, but I remember like I had to walk on stage with those, and it was rough. Like it was a struggle because I had to rig the pole and I had to walk towards the audience while giving them a sharp, fancy look, and then I turned to the right and walked off stage. And it was very interesting, actually, like with this scene and in terms of walking. I remember like the scene was never as funny as it was intended to be when I did it. The other guy that used to play the show before me, a guy named Niall Jamal, he I think the scene must have been pretty funny with him because he has like huge kind of like almost afro hair. But like I was always kind of expecting people to laugh more than they did. And I remember like I was walking there and like it was kind of difficult for me to walk in those shoes. I wasn't really good at it. Didn't have the kind of the posturing of the feet and so on. I was walking off stage, and this we had like the rigger of the show was a girl from France named Marie France. Yeah, she was French, named Marie France. Lol. Anyway, she told me like I walked off stage, and she told me one day, I know why the scene isn't funny. And I was like, what do you mean? No, you walk too much like a man. She said. I'm like, what do you mean? No, like you're not good at walking in heels. So her and another girl gave me a workshop on walking in heels. And after that, the scene got funny. People started to laugh when I turned around and walked towards the audience. It was quite specific. So it's obviously there that like my leg placement and like the way I moved was just not comfortable enough. And like, I mean, lo and behold, I was almost dying walking on those shoes. So that was very, very interesting, just again, in terms of how you posture. Yeah,
it's kind of interesting, honestly, I suppose, with the heels, they're probably a very specific technique. I suppose it's kind of what I was saying. I'm probably not going to get into it more, but subverting gender expectations is quite topical nowadays as well. And just women are I suppose the normal role would be wearing high heels or seeing as that. But then when men wear them, it's considered feminine. But, you know, I suppose it's like we need to come around and just go, anyone can wear high heels. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like I've kind of gone almost, not blind to it, but I just have so many friends that just wear all kinds of weird things and do all kinds of weird stuff with that. So it's kind of become almost, at least in my little circle, quite normalized to see all those sorts of variations. Like, a couple of friends of mine from the UK who are just like, every time I see him, I'm just like, what the hell is he wearing? Like, I don't care. It looks awesome, but it's just very unconventional, and I can certainly appreciate that.
Yeah.
But
I think that's probably, I think we covered most of our kind of questions and other stuff. So I suppose the whole point of this podcast is to announce we have a new program on Handstand Factory called Stand. Check it out. If you go over, you see it on our social media, you see it in the show notes. Please check out our program Stand. It's teaching you everything you need to know to do the two-footed straight footstand. It's pretty advanced. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It goes into some very deep concepts. We've been working away. Team has been slaving away. It's just like all our other programs. You get a lot of videos. You get a manual. You know, you get me and Mikael. What more do you need? Like, we're pretty fucking good at standing on our feet. You know, we can do it for hours sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the amount of foot standing we had to do when filming this as well. There was a lot of foot standing.
Yeah.
It was hardcore.
Cold as well when we did it. So
yeah, it was quite cold. Effort. Yeah, quite cold, and we had to stand without our shirts on. Yeah. It's okay for me. I had a good layer of blubber, which couldn't cover these things up, but Mikael was very cold. So, yeah, to get Stand, please check it out on handstandfactory.com/stand. I think is the address. If not, it's in the show notes. Other than that, thanks for checking us out this week, and we'll get back to you next week.
Cheers.
This is an April Fool's, by the way.
The Handstandcast is brought to you by Handstand Factory and is produced by Motion Impulse. Thanks for tuning in. You can find a full transcript of each episode along with the show notes and any relevant references on handstandfactory.com/podcast. Thanks to Isaac for editing and Jordan for transcriptions. Music by Daniel Horwath. If you want to support the show, you can buy us a coffee on buymeacoffee.com or consider starting one of our Handstand Factory online programs. Links are in the show notes.